positions and middle game advantages, you know, right? How to win certain types of positions where you have the advantage or kind of the better position. What is that? Math kangaroo? Okay.
What?
Well, if you're interested in math, maybe you can look at that. Not right now.
I know later on today I had like a nighttime there's a math stuff going on.
Okay. So, anyhow, who knows what a pass pawn is? I'm actually not going to go to that slide. Who knows what a pass pawn is? Yes.
A pawn with no one blocking it. Like,
Sure.
In an open file.
Yeah, okay. Everyone agree with that?
Can I trade a bishop for a queen? A white queen?
Okay. We'll see if we can get that. All right. Yes, you are right. A passed pawn is a pawn that is passed. Just kidding. Passed pawn is a pawn which can be advanced to the other side without encountering any of the opponent's pawns. This is a very important definition because, you know, a passed pawn doesn't necessarily have to be like completely free, nobody's blocking it. It just means that if, for example, you know, you were given like a million different moves and you're just pushing your pawn forward, you will never get to a square where any enemy pawn will be able to capture you or stop you in that sense. So a passed pawn is basically a pawn that can move without meeting any of the opponent's pawns. Yeah?
Can I trade a black king for a black bishop, knight, rook, and pawn?
It's very
We
specific.
can do later.
But right now we don't really need the board, so
Let's just
we'll make
focus on
that.
one.
Anyhow, the closer a passed pawn is to its promotion square, the more dangerous it is. And this is very important because if you are able to keep a passed pawn very close to the end of the board, you're basically tying your enemy pieces down to that defense. So that's a very big advantage, right? It's a very important attacking weapon. And I remember, what was it that Yuri said about the values of like, you know, pawns? What was that one?
Yeah, one of the coach said if the pawn is on the 7th rank, it was a rook. If it's the 6th rank, it was a knight. Something like that.
Okay, yeah, sure. Something like that. But that kind of goes to show how important passed pawns are, right? If you can get a pawn to the 7th rank and it's also supported, apparently it's considered to be worth around a rook, 5 points. And if it's on the 6th rank file, it's going to be worth around 3 points. Now, that's kind of just like imaginary. It's not actually worth 3 or 5, it's still a pawn. But it goes to show how, you know, important and how valuable these pawns are when they get close to the end of the board, right? So today we're going to learn about how to use passed pawns for advantage. Does white have a passed pawn here?
No.
I don't like when that happens because I'm not changing. But does white have a passed pawn there?
No.
Okay, why not?
Because if they move up, the black pawn can take.
Yeah, right, and for that reason, black also doesn't have a passed pawn, right? Okay. Does white have a passed pawn here?
Yeah.
Yeah, white has a passed pawn here because, you know, you push it, nobody can take it. Black has a passed pawn as well, yes, but white's pawn is closer to the end of the board, right, which is great. Can you see the board, or is the computer blocking the way? Okay. What about here? Does anybody have a passed pawn?
No.
No, but let's imagine you're playing black here and there were kings like there or something. What would he play as black?
Push pawn down.
Yeah, you can push any of the 2 pawns down, b3 or c3. And what you're going to end up doing is you're going to create a passed pawn, regardless of what pawn you push. And creating a passed pawn is a very important idea in king and pawn endgames, right? So, I mean, just to go a bit off topic here, does anyone know how to win a position like this?
For white?
Wait, I can't
Does anyone know how to win this position with white? This is a classic must-know king and pawn endgame passed pawn breakthrough. Very, very important to know.
push middle pawn.
No.
I don't really know.
Actually, yeah. Yeah, push middle pawn.
Okay, well let's see. All right.
Punch pawn. Yeah.
We play b6 and then they just take us.
Wait.
Oh. Eat it and push the C pawn.
Yeah, and you push c6. The idea is if they take your pawn, you have a break through a6 pawn here. Right? So even though you gave up 2 pawns, what happened is you created a passed pawn that the black king is too far away to stop, and your pawn's also close to the end. So you're able to promote the queen first, and you're going to win the game. So we call it pawn break. We're just breaking through to create a passed pawn. And for these types of positions, it always starts by pushing the b pawn up. Depending on which pawn, if they use the c pawn, you play a6. You use the a pawn, you play c6. You just want to create a passed pawn for one of these pawns that you have. So yeah, that's very, very important pawn break to know. That I don't know if I taught already, but if I didn't, well, there you go. Now you know. Anyhow, let's just head back. So, what about this one? If we're playing black, can we create a pass pawn?
Yes.
How?
Depending. Wait, whose moves?
Black to move.
Oh, black move.
The main issue here is that if we play g3, then white has enough defenders of the square to just get rid of her pawn.
If it's white to move, then you can make the pawn.
Yeah, if it's white to move, then white's kind of forced to move the pawn, so yeah, black can create a pass pawn. And if it was black's move, I would probably play h3 for black. And if white is forced to move the pawns, usually they have kings. But if they don't, for some reason, can't move their king, after h3, white's forced to push the f pawn, and then you can just auto sock, you can take f pawn, and you can push. So, or you can just play g3. Any of those two, you create a pass pawn. So, just those types of ideas, just giving you some ideas for how to create passed pawns in kind of king and pawn endgames, right? And that's where you can see the value of, yeah, both sides can have a passed pawn, but my passed pawn is closer to the end of the board. And that matters, right? That matters. So if you're ever in a game where you have a passed pawn, but your opponent also has a passed pawn, like lots of times, assuming there's no tactics, it's who can push their passed pawn further, right? Because if you just push your passed pawn and then the opponent's just moving around the pieces, what's going to happen is your passed pawn is going to be a bigger threat than theirs. And for that reason, they have to spend a lot of time defending your attack. So you're going to be on the attack. And that's always a nice thing to do. Anyways, so ways to stop a passed pawn. So I wasn't going to talk about the cunning thing, but I'll just give you 2 ideas. This is pretty basic. If there's a passed pawn, as a defender, there are 2 ways you can stop it. One is you can block it. On the left, right, that's a block. You put a knight, usually it's a knight that blocks, or a king, right? But the knight goes in front of the pawn, so the pawn can't push it. Well, I mean, sometimes it could be a king, just set it in position, right? So this is what blocking means. Occupying the square directly in front of the pawn, so we don't allow the pawn to push up. Controlling is not like, the pawn can still move up, but you are defending the square that the pawn can go to, so if they were to push up, you just take it, so they probably wouldn't. So those are 2 defensive ways, right? And that will affect, well, all the tactics that are associated with it, right? So right away, if you think about it, if we try and lure this bishop off this diagonal, then we can push up and promote, right? But on here, if we try and lure the knight off by putting our queen here, and they take, it's not going to do anything because we still can't push the pawn. So those are just some ideas. There are many strategies we can use to support our passed pawn. So one is that the goal is always to push our passed pawn to the end. So one is, we can use our pieces to support the pawn. Like we can place them in ways that will protect the pawn, or it will protect the square in front of the pawn so that, you can push the pawn forward, and so on. One of the best examples is, if you have a rook and a pawn, and you want to use the rook to support the pawn, especially in rook and pawn endgames, you usually want to place it behind the pawn. So what I mean by that is if you take a look at this, let's just set a position, right? Imagine, I don't know, this was the position here. Sure, something like, I don't know, this is definitely better for white. Not that. Right, let's imagine something like this was the position, right? So a good idea for white is, okay, white can also push the pawn up. But actually, let's do this. This one could be good. Now white has two ways to defend the pawn, right? White can play rook b4, white can play rook c6. This is a bad example because they both work no way. Anyways, but usually in many scenarios, especially when there's like a bunch of other pawns going on, when we want to push a passed pawn, we usually put our rook behind the pawn. I think this example would be better if the rook was like here. Yeah, this is a better example. Because the idea is that if lots of times if we end up with the rook protecting the pawn on the side or from the back, your opponent will try and defend by going behind the pawn to prevent you from, promoting at least. So in that case, we usually, as the attacker, like to put our rook behind the pawn when we push it, just so they can't like go behind, and then we basically force them to go to the back like this. Okay, instead of the draw, but yeah, you get the point. The idea is we want to put the rook behind the pawn. That tends to be generally the rule of thumb. Just because, like, with the rook behind the pawn, one, it protects the pawn, but two, if the black rook moves away, well, the rook is now stuck there forever, right? So you can push the pawn, you can promote. If the rook is on the side, like I guess it takes longer time to try and get rid of that rook if it's in front. So those are just two ideas. The rook behind the pawn protects the pawn, it supports the pawn moving forward. So that's a good example of how we can kind of push and pass the pawns forward. Now the second one is if you're a tactical player and there's defenders in the front, you can eliminate them with tactics, and that's going to be what most of this lesson is going to be talking about. Right? So here are some basic examples. Right? One on the left, we want to push the pawn to the end, but there's a knight controlling the square. So what do? Yeah, we play rook takes knight. So that's a very straightforward example. Rook takes knight, pawn takes, and then we promote to queen. So basic example here. What about this one? We want to push the pawn, and our opponent, see, we don't have a rook behind the pawn, right? We have a rook on the side, so we're not able to support the pawn from pushing forward. And black has put a rook behind the pawn. This is a big issue. What can we play as white?
Rook check.
Yeah, right? We recognize that the king and king are like placed opposite of each other. Let me test this card. Okay, could be better. But the rook can go to, I believe that is A, B, C, D4. Rook D4 check. And we basically force the king up to the fifth rank. Then we go up and check. We trade the rooks, and then we promote next move. So those are kind of just some basic kind of ways that we can eliminate the defender and promote our pawn to a queen. Keep in mind that when we promote, how many points do we gain? Assuming we always promote to a queen. Okay, let's think, right? If we push a pawn to the end, we get a queen, do we lose anything?
A pawn.
Yeah, we lose a pawn, so how many points is that? 8 points, right? But 8 points is a lot of points, right? That's like getting a free rook and bishop. That's a lot of points, right? So many times you'll see things where, yeah, we're making a bad trade, right? We're sacrificing a rook for a knight, but we promote to a queen, and that gives us a lot of points. And queens are always nice to have, right? So that's why it has possibilities. So I kind of figured out that over these lessons, I always put puzzles here, like people in here, especially people in the front row here, are always going to have to look around the computer. So I put it on the left there. I think it's easier for you guys to see. So we're playing white here. What can we play? Right? So keep in mind that if we go straight up and push a7, let me test this one. If we go up and push a7, then black's just going to play king b7, and then we lose our pawn. And then that's not good, because we just lose our pawn. So is there a way we can... Yeah, okay, bishop check, yeah, Harvey?
Bishop d5.
Yeah, bishop d5 check, right? So the idea of bishop d5 check is that if black takes the bishop, well now we can push your pawn forward, and the king's outside of the square, where that can stop the pawn. And if black's like, okay, I don't want to take your bishop, I know what you're doing, I'm going to play king c7. Well, you can still push a7 because the bishop on d5 protects the a8 square. So bishop d5 check is the best move here, and that's why bishop d7, which does the same thing, if black takes, then we push pawn, isn't the best, because after bishop d7, black can go king c7, and if we play a7, they can go king b7, which is not protected by the bishop, whereas in here, it is. So bishop d5 check. Best move. What about this one? Black to play. And generally speaking, if whoever side to play, it's whatever perspective it is. So this is black on. Yeah, Harvey?
Bishop A3.
Yeah, bishop a3, right? So what we want to do is we're basically pinning the bishop, right? Now we're threatening to promote to a queen. And I don't think white can stop that. Bishop a3. Yeah, that makes sense? How about this one? On the left. Black to play. Rook f1? Rook h1, yeah. The idea behind rook h1 check is if king takes, we take f2, and the unfortunate placement of white's rook, right, in front of their passed pawn means that black is able to just promote to a queen and white can't stop us. So yeah, good spot, right? What about this one, white to play? Yeah, rook b6, right? This is like the classic interfering example, right? We interfere with the rook and the pawn. If black were to play rook takes rook, then pawn takes rook, and it just so happens that these two pawns protect these two squares, which is what black really needs to defend the b8 promotion. So if black used the pawn to take the rook, then white will promote to a queen. So rook b6 is a pretty natural, but also pretty nice move as well. Okay, I think the next few are just interfering puzzles, so I think that gives you the hint. Black to play over there. I think the best way to approach these types of puzzles, because you will be seeing this in the homework, is that first, if you have a passed pawn, think about what happens if I just push the passed pawn. What are they going to defend? How are they going to defend it? To figure out, okay, what can I do about that? Yes, Harvey?
F3.
Yeah, f3, right? So we basically play f3. If white takes our f3 pawn, we can play h2, and they can't stop us anymore with bishop e4 because the pawn just blocks the bishop, right? And if white ignores it, then we just push h2 anyways. So yeah. All right. So I don't even know what time it is, but this is what? Yeah, it's a quick lesson. Okay. Not all pretty sacrifices have to be check based, right? In fact, especially nowadays, usually the hardest sacrifices to see are sacrifices where you sacrifice something and you don't really get material back. Your position is just better, and that's what we call positional sacrifices, and that's very advanced. We won't be going through that, but right now, just try and think about sacrifices as ways to kind of get something you want, right? So at the cost of material. Over here, we want to push this pawn up, right? But if we push this pawn up, what happens? What if we play h5? What do you think black will play?
D6.
Yeah, d6, right? And the idea is after d6, we move the bishop out, and then black's going to get their bishop out somewhere, and they're just going to stay on this diagonal. Keep in mind it's opposite colored bishops. And opposite colored bishops are very drawish, right? For black, if black wants to play for a draw, black just has to move this bishop back and forth on that one diagonal, and white will never be able to push this one without getting it taken, and that'll be a draw. Yes, Harvey?
Bishop D6 check.
Yeah, bishop d6 check for sure. So, hold on a second. Okay. So bishop b6 check, that's definitely the case. Yeah, so bishop d6 check. It's definitely nice. Yeah, I put a brilliant two there. I noticed, I don't know how many students are in this class, 8? 8, right? So we got the half, that's the quiet half today, right? So I'm sure if we had the other 4, they would be like, I'd have to be like, quiet down, everyone's, yeah. But it's a really nice move. If you can see this in a game, you should give yourself a pat on the back, and your opponent should be, wow, it's a really good move.
Why?
Well, we already saw the idea of the h5, d6. We don't really win anything, so we don't want black to have the option of d6. So we play bishop d6 check. Now, if they move their king out of the way, we play h5, and then we just push. So they're probably going to take our bishop, but what ends up happening is now it's hard for this light squared bishop to get out, right? Because this pawn prevents this pawn from pushing forward, which prevents this bishop from going to where the bishop wants. So we could just push h5. And another thing I guess that's nice is this king covers these 2 squares very, very nicely. So that prevents any ideas like bishop b7, bishop b4, or bishop a6, bishop b3 to try and prevent white from going here, right? With bishop a6, we just go h3, and there's no such thing as bishop b3 anymore because it's too slow and also doesn't work. We go h7. Same thing applies to bishop b7. d5, if you're wondering, is just too slow. By the time black plays d6 to prepare bishop f5, we already have h7. So, yeah, this is a lot of calculation required. But if you're able to see bishop d6 check, that's the difference between a win and a draw or a loss, right? Okay. So that's good. Happened here, okay. What about this one? This is a hard one. I looked at this one, I'm like, ooh, that's hard.
Are we playing black or white?
We're playing as white. Yeah, this is a weird one. Yes, we are playing as white, which means that the white pawns are going this way and the black pawns are going this way. And just like, this puzzle's like, wow, that's such a weird puzzle. But the best way to approach it is to think, okay, what's my most natural move? h7. What might happen after h7? And then go
Queen
from there.
Oh.
Queen sack. Queen in the corner.
Queen a1.
Queen corner. Rook takes. Rook takes. You push pawn off.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, let's take a look at what this. Let's take a look at what the answer is here. What's going on here? Okay. Well, let's take a look. Okay, let's take a look at this first. h7, right? It actually turns out not to be the best move. The idea is after h7, blacks will promote to queen. Trade happens, and okay, at this point, it just seems like white. Okay, what is this engine doing? It's not being smart. You just see that it says white was winning, and then black plays a move, and now it's saying it's a draw. Okay, anyways, so the idea here is that black cannot allow white to promote to a queen without at least getting it back, right? So black's just going to keep on checking, and white's going to have to try and avoid the checks. There's no more checks now, at least no rook h1 anymore. But what do you think black can play? Well, black can play rook d2, right?
Oh.
And this forces, a trade here, and this becomes a draw. So it's definitely not h7. It's actually queen a1. So yes, good move. Surprisingly, you saw that in like 2 seconds. This is a hard move to spot,
No.
right?
No.
For me, for me. Well, it's just weird. You don't really see this, right? Queen a1 is a hard move to spot, right? Especially if you're just mainly focused on h7 and pushing the pawns up, right? The idea is now you get like that extra move, right? You don't allow black to play a1 equals queen with check anymore because you promote with check. And now the idea is after king g1, what do we play? Yeah, we play queen g8. That's the simplest way to win. We get rid of that pawn, and then we play queen versus rook. Who can win this as white?
White can win.
Yeah, white can win this, right? Queen versus rook is not very common, but it could happen. I played this once, queen versus rook, and it lasted like 5 hours, but I ended up winning. And the basic idea is we need to use the king as well. If you are playing with king and rook, the idea for defending is to keep the rook and king as close as possible, because the only way for white to win is to try and fork you with the queen. So white's idea is going to try and like put you in like zugzwang or something, where you're forced to move your rook away. And black's idea is just going to be try to keep the rook as close as possible, or give a lot of checks and maybe skewer, right? But queen a1 was the move. Very nice move. And then let's take a look at this one. I don't know if I have this. I thought I had this in my analysis, but no. Because this is a really long puzzle. This is a hard puzzle. So I'm going to leave this here. And I'll give you some time to think. But I think you guys can all see the first one.
Bishop down.
Bishop sat. Bishop a7?
Bishop down.
All right. Well, okay. Let's see. Let's take a look. So, all right. Yeah, bishop a7 makes sense. Just like with every puzzle, we want to see, okay, what happens if we push our pawn? If we push our pawn, they just go e4. That's the idea, right? And then, you know, black's just going to eat the pawn like this. Our king's too far away to do anything. So that's the idea. If we push h7, they're just going to play e4. All right. We want to lure the bishop out of the way. If they take the bishop, we just promote. So they probably won't do that. So they're going to keep their bishop alive on this diagonal. Looks weird, but I mean, after h7, they can still play e4. So that's fine. All right. Let's just try and harass this bishop a bit. Just, you know, maybe the bishop's going to get offline. Okay. This is the hardest move of the puzzle. But it's possible to find just because there's not really a lot of moves you can actually play. This is a really hard one.
King d3.
King d3 and then king g5. Right? So
Bishop in front of pawn. No, like beside to like bottom left. Yes.
here, why?
Because if you do that, pawn takes king blocks. That king tries to take, your pawn will promote blocks.
Okay. I actually want to try this out. What happens if we do this? Oh, that's so cool. Okay. That's the move, yeah. Bishop d4. It's a hard one to spot, but yeah. Well, the idea is if they take like this, you have king d3, right? And now this bishop is stuck. It can't defend the square anymore because you blocked the pawn, right? And now you can't really stop this guy. Well, if bishop takes instead, what's the idea?
You go attack the bishop.
King d3, okay, yeah, alright. But, and the idea is if king d5, you push, the idea was to play e4. But after e4, well, the king can just take the bishop.
Oh.
Right? So, we sacrifice the bishop to get our king from c1 to d3, basically. Okay, then that, what happens if they just go back to a1, right? Our king can't teleport here, it's not going to work.
Then blocks the pawn.
Now we play king e4 to block the pawn. And now we're able to push the pawn to the end.
Oh.
This is a cool puzzle. I like this puzzle because it requires you to think, right? About all of the ideas we talked about today in class, right? We're defending their passed pawn at the same time we're preventing them from defending against our passed pawn. I like that. Okay. So, those were the nice puzzles I had.